Hello, everyone. Welcome to our
Oh, I look like
LightBox
Peter.
Expo panel called Directors Roundtable at Pixar, Netflix, Sony, Baobab, Tonko, and more. I'm so excited to do this panel, and Dice is going to join us. There he is. Hi, Dice. Your name is Pig.
Oh, look at that
Pig.
drawing.
Oh.
Oh,
Hi.
background's so cute.
I love that we have such great diversity on this panel. And I can't take credit because this is all Bobby handpicked you all to be on here. But anyways, all right. So today we're going to talk about your careers, your journeys, and your perspectives on industry change. And I would say you can ask us questions live, but I don't know how to do this and answer chat questions at the same time, but I'll figure it out. If you guys have questions, put some of them into the chat and I'll see if I can get to them. All right. First, I'm going to introduce you all in alphabetical order. And because you guys are so accomplished, hopefully this doesn't take half the entire session, but I'll talk really fast. All right. Welcome, Dice. After graduating from the School of Visual Arts in New York, Dice has worked on visual development at Blue Sky Studios on Ice Age Robots and Horton Hears a Who. His credits at Pixar include lighting art director for Toy Story 3 and Monsters U. And after the success of Dice's directorial debut, the Academy Award nominated short film, The Dam Keeper, he left Pixar to co-found Tonko House with Robert Kondo. And Dice was recently honored with the 2021 June Foray Award at the 48th Annie Awards for his extracurricular projects such as the Totoro Forest Project and Sketch Travel. For those of you who don't know what the June Foray Award's about, it's for somebody who has made amazing contributions to the field of animation, especially for the well-being of the world. Basically, Dice is saving the world with animation. Dice is currently serving as creator and directing showrunner of Netflix's upcoming series, Oni, which you all need to watch when it comes out.
I've seen it.
Thank you. Erick worked on it. Erick is
okay, Erick O, who is joining us from Korea, and it's like 3 a.m. there. So thank you, Erick. He's a 2021 Oscar-nominated Korean filmmaker artist at Baobab Studios, based in the San Francisco Bay Area. His films have been introduced and awarded at film festivals, including the Academy Awards, Annie Awards, Annecy Animation Festival, Zagreb Film Festival, SIGGRAPH, Anima Mundi, and more. Erick was an animator at Pixar from 2010 to 2016. He then joined Tonko House and directed Pig, the Dam Keeper Poems, which won the Crystal Award at Annecy 2018. And his recent short opera was nominated for the Best Animated Short Oscar. Erick then joined Baobab, 9-time Emmy Award and 2 times Annie Award winning independent interactive animation studio. There he created Namu, which means tree in Korean, an animated narrative poem come to life, inspired by the passing of his grandfather. And you'll be able to see it soon. It's doing the festival circuit right now. And Jill Culton is an American filmmaker and a 30-year veteran of animated feature films. She is considered to be among the first female pioneers who helped further the medium of computer feature animation. She spent a decade at Pixar, where she was an animator and story artist on all their early classics, Toy Story, A Bug's Life, Toy Story 2, and has an original story by credit on Monsters, Inc. She also designed Jessie the Cowgirl doll in the Toy Story franchise and helped develop Hotel Transylvania. And most recently, she wrote and directed DreamWorks' Abominable, earning her an Animation Magazine's Game Changer Award for becoming the first female to both write and direct an original animated feature. Thank you for paving the way for us, Jill. And Maggie Kang has been a story artist for over 15 years at various feature film studios, including DreamWorks, Blue Sky, Illuminations, and Warner Animation Group. She's currently directing the recently announced K-pop Demon Hunters movie at Sony Pictures Animation, which I'm super excited to see. And it's amazing that you're here after, I don't know if I'm allowed to say
2 days
personal development. I think it's amazing that you're able to show up here. Yes. And you look great. After I had kids, I was like, I gave up on trying.
Oh, my kid is, she's 4, so she's 4. She's not like a baby. Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah.
It's not
too hard.
Ramsey is an American illustrator, storyboard artist, story artist, film director, and film producer. He directed DreamWorks Animation's Rise of the Guardians and co-directed Sony's Pictures Animation Spider-Man. which he won an Academy Award for. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. For Spider-Man, he became the first African-American to be nominated for and win an Academy Award for Best Animated Feature. He was also the first African-American to direct a big budget animated feature, Guardians. He's worked as a storyboard artist and production illustrator in 26 films, including Predator 2, Backdraft, Independence Day, Fight Club, AI. Ramsey grew up in the Crenshaw district of South Los Angeles, studied painting at UCLA for 2 years before enrolling in film classes at LA City College. And I couldn't find on Wikipedia all the amazing projects you're working on now, but you'll tell us during the thing because I know about them. I just don't know if I'm allowed to talk about them. But last but not least is Shannon Tindle, whose project Peter Ramsey is on. Okay, Shannon Tindle is a designer, storyboard artist, TV writer, screenwriter, and film director. He won an Emmy of Outstanding Individual Achievement for Animation for Go Goo Go. He has worked on story for DreamWorks The Crude. He's a badass Annie Award nominated character designer. He also created Laika's Coraline and Kubo and the Two Strings. He's directing a CG animated Ultraman film for Netflix and is the EP of Netflix's upcoming Lost Ollie with Peter, an adaptation of William Joyce's children's book. Welcome, everyone. I didn't miss anyone, right?
I think you missed me, but that's okay.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Hold on.
It's okay. It's okay.
Give me a second.
It's okay.
I have
it's
this.
okay. I'm not. It's impressive.
I have your.
I bow to you, Titans. That like those. Yeah, that was amazing.
No, don't.
You got that.
Give me a second. I'm gonna get there real soon. I have this for sure. Okay, you guys should do funny banter right now while
I'm just admiring the Ranma poster in the back.
Huh? What was that?
I'm admiring the Ranma poster in the back. Yeah.
Yeah. It's vintage from the 90s.
Yeah.
Cool. So cute.
90s.
I know.
From the
90s is vintage now. That's right. We're all old.
Okay. I'm ready. Okay. Domee is directing Pixar's feature Turning Red. She also directed the 2018 short film Bao, which won the Academy Award for Best Animated Short, becoming the first woman to direct a short film for Pixar. She also worked on amazing films such as Inside Out, Incredibles 2, and Toy Story 4 as a storyboard artist. And I recently had the pleasure of meeting Ed Catmull, and he says that Domee is the one to watch out for, and he's the one that he's most excited about. Not to say everyone else is not amazing, but
very nice of him.
That shows you how amazing. And I am personally thankful to you for being an Asian American woman director, paving the way for us all, along with Maggie and also other amazing badass Asian American women.
5.
Okay, the first question for all, because there's so many of you, I'm going to be directing individual questions to each of you. But before that, I'm going to give one for all of you to answer, which is, did you always know you wanted to direct? I'm going to randomly call on somebody. Jill.
I'll go take this one first. No, that is the honest answer. I was incredibly shy, student at CalArts, and actually that question was asked by Bob Winquist, who was kind of the head of the animation department when I was there. And we went around the classroom and he said, "What do you want to do in this industry?" And I think I almost had a heart attack just uttering the words animator, because I thought there's no way I'm even going to become that. And so it's really interesting, but I think, being at Pixar, being part of the whole development of CG animation, after a couple movies on at Pixar, maybe the first Toy Story, Bugs Life, even Monsters, I just kept getting asked to direct. And I think it's because they call us, quote unquote, the pioneers. I think everyone at Pixar at the time would laugh at that statement. But I just started to feel over the years, like, maybe I should try this. I think everyone on this panel, I can say one of my favorite quotes is the Robin Williams quote from Dead Poet Society that says, the powerful play goes on and you might contribute a verse. And I think all of us here have kind of this weird desire. I think all artists do, to contribute a verse. And so I took that leap and stepped into directing, but I never intended to do it.
World is better because of it. I'm gonna call Maggie.
Oh,
Muted.
You're muted.
I feel like we've talked so much. Like I've done so many of these talks with you.
Yes. First time I get to see your face, though.
I know,
Everything
right?
else is
Yeah,
Clubhouse.
yeah,
Boys,
true.
excited.
I mean, I think so. Like I grew up with a father or a dad, like a dad who he loves foreign film, and he has this huge collection of like 5,000 or 6,000 titles. So as a kid, I just grew up watching all these like old movies by these amazing directors, and I didn't know what any of them really meant, but I just really all the stories really spoke to me, and I loved like slice of life kind of storytelling. And we would watch like Kurosawa movies for like Christmas. We would just sit around and that's what we would just watch, and I had to rewatch them as an adult because it meant something more later when I could understand it. But just growing up in an environment like that just really made me want to tell stories. I didn't think I would. I liked drawing, so naturally animation was the path. But I didn't really think that I would be working on super complicated world building movies like we do in animation, where you're juggling like 20 characters. But yeah, I've always wanted to do it.
Maggie, how did you when did you transition from story to directing? Like, how'd you get that opportunity?
Well, I had built a relationship with the producer that I'm working with, who I worked with on all the Shrek movies, or Shrek 4. I worked with him, and he produced all the Shrek movies and stuff. And he approached me and said like, "Hey, I just really want to do something with you." And so we were kind of looking for a project to do together. And then that was maybe about 4 years ago. And I knew that I was kind of ready to, after supervising and stuff, I was really, really ready to just do something that was more personal and just tell my story. And so I pitched it to him, and he was like, "This is great. I love it." And then the next week we were just working together. So that's how it happened.
Easy. How about you, Dice?
Oh no. No, I think I'm with you guys. I think I would be lying if I wasn't thinking about it. But I think we all started doing art because we wanted to express ourselves, right? So I don't know about the job of directing is what I wanted to do, but it's more like I wanted to express myself. That's why I started drawing and painting, and I'm sure everybody's the same. But somehow in this industry, at least when I started this industry, there was this common kind of understanding that you have to have a certain path or a certain quality to become a director. So I never thought I had that. I don't, my English is not my first language. I'm just typical shy Asian person. So I just never thought I would be able to maneuver this big group of people who speak a little more, than I do, right? And more importantly, I pursued more art department, which is not the typical path to become a director. Like you have to either be a story artist or animator. But I always had the issue with that because I feel like every single person who's involved in filmmaking, they are filmmakers, no matter what they do. So in a way, actually one of this group, Erick inspired me. Like I remember meeting Erick when he first started at Pixar. He was just right out of school, and he already had his own personal film, and he showed it to me. He was much younger, and I was like, "Oh, you just started at Pixar, welcome!" And then he showed me like a bunch of films he's directed, and I'm like, "Can you do that? Like you didn't really take the steps, And he really inspired me, and I just felt like you just have to do it, and and it's not like you need a permission to become a director. You might need a permission to become a director at $1 million, like $100 million feature film project, but to be a director, you can do it tomorrow, today. So in a way, Erick and many other independent filmmakers inspired me. to pursue my own.
That's amazing. And it's awesome that you just did it. Like, I'm not going to wait in this long Pixar line. I'm just going to do it. All right. All right. How about you, Shannon?
I didn't even think I would work in this industry. I grew up in rural Kentucky. Nobody does this there. You know, my dad was an electrician and my mom was a nurse, but I always drew. I had a grandmother who, she always painted. So she had the Loomis books downstairs and I would just spend hours drawing down there. But there is a big tradition of just telling stories where I grew up. You just sit around, you tell stories all day. So I knew as soon as I decided that I wanted to come out and get into filmmaking, that I wanted to tell stories. And then what happens is, I think there are people who want to be directors and there are people who want to tell their stories. And you tend to be like, if you're the kind of the expert on that story, you naturally gravitate like, well, I guess I'll lead it then. I could never just give an idea away for somebody else to make. I couldn't do it. That'd be too heartbreaking. And so I just, what I started to do is I would pitch an idea. And if you want to buy it, then I have to be attached to make it. So that was the leverage. You can't have this idea if I'm not going to be the one to make it. So it really didn't have anything to do with wanting the title of director, but wanting to be the one that shepherded the story and tell the story. And you know, there were people crazy enough to say, okay, cool, we'll buy it and we'll buy into you and we'll let you do it. So there was no master plan other than I'd like to tell this story. Can I tell that story? Sure. Okay, cool. Let's try that out. And then, you know, then you get fired and then you try it again. And, you know, it's like, it's whatever. You have to be really stubborn.
Got it. Stubbornness, the key trait. How about you, Peter?
You're muted.
Oh, there you go.
Mute.
You made it.
Muted. It's gold, guys. It's gold.
I know, all the wisdom. Okay, there you go.
Similarly to Shannon, growing up, I had no concept of, you know, of what that meant or what that was, or even the thought of like working in the industry in any capacity. I just loved movies. I was a huge reader. So all those things, but specifically with movies, I mean, you know, I didn't get to go to the theater much. So the times I did, it was just this overwhelming, like just this gigantic emotional experience. You know, I'd go like once, twice a year when I was a kid. You know, my dad would, all right, come on, let's go, you know. And so a lot of my imaginative life was trying, you know, whether I was drawing pictures on paper or whether I was watching a cartoon on TV, was trying to like recapture and recreate that emotional like wave that would like hit me in the movie theater. And honestly, it wasn't until, oh God, I guess I was heading into my 20s and had become a big movie fan. I had some friends who were like more serious about movies, so they'd be saying like Coppola, Scorsese, and I was sort of like, who are those guys? What is that? What is that? And just like discovering all these different filmmakers, you know, just like devouring all this stuff and just loving movies and getting more into it. And oddly enough, I mean, I had a real broad, you know, expanse of movies that I was really into, but it wasn't until I saw. Oh, and I should say, I'd flirted around with like making little Super 8 movies, you know, little stop motion things and goofing around with cameras. And so the idea of making movies, it wasn't completely alien, but for whatever reason, it didn't really like take hold as something that I could actually think about actually doing. Me and my friends went to CET and came out of the theater, and I was just looking at how moved and how impacted the people were by the movie, and just thinking, man, it's just an incredible, for some reason that day, that screening, that time, it really hit me what an incredible power it was to be able to like, you know, take that emotion that I'd felt all my life and like transfer it to a bunch of other people. And that was the day I was like, I think that's what I want to do. I think that's what I want to try to do. And then it just became a path of, how do I get there? I got no money. I'm not in film school. I, you know, can't do this, can't do that. And I'd stumbled into storyboarding, and it was just this constant thing of like learning all I could, and whatever little, rock hold on the side of the mountain I could pull myself to get closer to that. And of course, trying to make films when I could, but God, I wish we'd had iPhones back then. So, but that was kind of it for me. It was like understanding what the job really was at a time when I thought maybe there was some way I could do something about it.
How about the first time that you had the opportunity to direct? How did that come about?
It was the first time I really got the opportunity was it was actually on a live action movie. It was on Poetic Justice, John Singleton's follow-up to Boys in the Hood. And I had storyboarded Boys with John. And we were starting early days on Poetic. And I had turned in some boards and he went, man, these are great. I love how you did this, blah, blah. I don't know if you've ever thought about directing, but you should really think about it. And I was like, come on, knucklehead. That's the whole reason I got into this. And he's like, right then and there, he said, you know what? We need a bunch of second unit shots of this mail truck that's going to go up the California coast, because that's a big part of the movie. And he said the producer was going to do it, but his schedule won't allow it. Why don't you do it? And that led to me like being with my first little crew, and we traveled up the California coast, and I got to direct an actual crew, and that was the first time I really got to do it. And that was like, wow. And it just felt like, oh yeah, this feels like, I'm sure I made 1,000 mistakes, but it still felt right.
That's gonna be next question, just so y'all prepare. It's about failures. Domee. Domee, tell us about if you always knew you wanted to be a director.
No, definitely not. I think like a lot of people here, I just really enjoyed drawing and telling stories ever since I was little. And my into animation was like through drawing and comics and manga, like, Ranma Half and Inuyasha and One Piece and stuff. But I always loved like seeing people's reactions to my drawings. And then that's kind of what got me into storyboarding. And then when I was working as a storyboard artist on Inside Out, I just had this urge to like want to create something on my own. And I think directing just came from this urge to like want to see and tell stories that I felt like weren't being explored enough of in the industry at the moment. And that was like the only way to kind of work on a project about an old Chinese lady committing infanticide. It just as if I came up with the idea on my own and tried to get people to work on it. So yeah, it just came from wanting to see the stuff that I was into like on the big screen. And the only way to do that was to make it myself. So yeah.
And Bao, you submitted that through the Spark. Is it the Spark short story? How did you get it made?
Oh, yeah, it was a theatrical short. And I'm really thankful that it was like the last one made in that process, or that so basically there was like an open audition, like an open call for pitches at the studio, and like I think any employee could sign up and pitch 3 ideas, and you went through like a gauntlet of like pitching to like a panel of directors and producers and execs, and then finally, if yours was the last one standing, it was picked as the next theatrical short. And I pitched Bao with other shorts, with 2 other ideas, but I had started Bao on my own, just as like a way to relieve stress after work. And then I kind of just threw it in the 3 pitches that I pitched to the studio. And it was, it was the most personal one out of all of the 3 ideas I picked. And it had the most surprising ending where the mom eats the dumpling. Spoiler alert. But I think that's what set it apart. And it was funny because like I had initially pitched like a like a different version of Bao because I had gotten some feedback that it might have been too dark for the studio to want to make. So I actually got rid of the part where she eats, where the mom character eats the dumpling, and it was a completely different ending. And then I was so lucky in that Pete Docter was there on the panel, and I had pitched him the original idea like months earlier, just because I wanted his feedback. And then he like stood up and he's like, "That's not the version you pitched me." And then he like turns to everybody else and he's like she had like a way cooler, weirder ending, but she changed it. And I was like, oh, you're putting me on the spot. And then I think they like let me like work on like rework my pitch and come back a week later to pitch the original ending for Bao, and that ended up being the short that was selected. So that was really cool, and also kind of gave me confidence in like trusting my offbeat weird instincts. Yeah, so that was really cool.
Awesome. And last but not least, Erick.
All right, I'm one of the panels. I was just listening to you guys. All right, really similar to all you guys. I mean, grew up as a huge animation and cartoon fan, and same here. I didn't have any concept of how animation is made. You know, I just want to do that, right? But and then as I grew up, I actually ended up going to fine art school instead of animation school. I thought I kind of wanted to learn overall visual medium, like film language. I mean, the fine art language. I thought fine art is the base of anything visual. So I ended up going to the fine art school, and that's where I was lucky enough to try a variety of mediums like oil paintings or installations, variety of that. And then that's when I was like, you know, it's all about telling the story. It's all about expressing yourself. And then almost right before graduation, I ended up self-teach how to animate, and then made just one short film with my downshooter. I got it from somewhere from who actually does animation from the other school. And then downshooter, LightBox, pencil and paper, and I just drew and drew. And then I ended up making a thing called short film. And then that actually changed my life because, oh my God, just seeing the drawing coming into my life real time with my drawing and pencil, that was fascinating, right? So that actually changed my life. And that's when I knew that this is what I'm gonna do. And then that's when I came to the States, went to UCLA and started making shorts, little more, learning more techniques and more of a film languages. And then luckily ended up going to Pixar to serve to work as an animator. And even there, I kept on making shorts, probably because, you know, not really thinking about maybe directing is not a big deal. You know what I mean? I mean, trying to say of course, directing a big movie, that's being a director, but okay, I'm just making a little movie here. It's like, it's just 1 minute, 5 minutes sometimes. So I kind of actually did that, I guess, probably because, you know, making a short just gives you so much freedom. You don't need to really think about the market. You just need to be, you can be selfish enough to just think about yourself, right? So I think I probably kept on doing that all the way to pretty recent too, you know, like including opera and Namu. I just worked with Maureen. And then yeah, that was probably, but what's interesting is that, thank you first of all, Dice, for, you know, putting me in the spot, but it was really Dice who really took me to that independent short film making towards to a little more to the commercial realm, because it was really Dice who invited me to Tonko House in the year of 2016. And that's when I ended up making the first commercial film with the, you know, how 5 minute episodes, 10 of them. So it's a mini limited series, but that was really the first experience for me to actually direct something a little more for the broader audience. And that was another opportunity for me to, you know, take directing as a little more seriously. And then, yeah, that's how I come, you know, so far up to this point.
Thank you. I'm hearing themes of basically not asking for permission and just doing it because you can't help it. You want to see your vision there. And then also a combination of having amazing mentors and people who, gave you that break and helped champion you. So lessons for everyone. All right. This question is for Jill and Peter. Well, all of you all are successful, but everyone has failures. And I want people to know that farts don't always smell good. Peter and Jill, can you tell me about any failures you've had and what you learned from them? And anyone else can pile on. I'm just asking you because you have a lot of experience.
Oh my God.
I don't know, Peter. You want to take this one first?
Yeah, I could take that one. I mean, I just to begin with, I mean, I think failure is something that if you're an artist, you kind of live with it every day. It's like, it literally is like a faithful companion through just about everything you do. At least for me, I mean, it's always something that I'm aware of, not in like a paranoid way. I mean, I think you get to a certain point after you've been working a little bit that you sort of accept that, well, yeah, it's going to happen. It's part of the process. If you can avoid taking yourself too seriously, and if you can have a little bit broader perspective, I think you understand that, yeah, it's actually it's a part of growth. It's a part of advancing yourself. Obviously, we're in a field where a lot of us are doing this to make a living, and there's the fear that you won't be able to do it anymore if you fail too spectacularly or too often. And I'll just tell everybody, when we made Rise of the Guardians, Maggie, you were on that movie, and Shannon, you were on a version of it, and we worked for years on that thing, and thanks, Domee, and worked for years on it, and when it came out and didn't do the box office that everybody was dreaming it was going to do, in fact, it fell like incredibly short of that box office. That was just a shock. Just like the shock of that was, it literally was like, okay, it's my first movie. It's a big movie, big studio. Oh my God. Everybody, I was traveling all over the world. Everybody thought it was going to make $1 billion. I mean, I'm not joking, man. It was like the scores and the screenings were great. Everything was coming up roses, and everything went like 180. And it was sort of like, what's the worst thing that could happen to this, enterprise? What would be the biggest twist ending we could put on this thing? And that's kind of what it was. So it was so surreal that it was, as I said, if you don't take yourself too seriously, those things can destroy you. But it was so outlandish and strange that I kind of was able to step back and go, well, I know we did good work. I'm not saying the movie was like, deserved a Nobel Prize or an Oscar for that matter, but I know we all did good work, and we all, gave our best shot. So it was a good lesson in not over-identifying with what you do. I think it was a good lesson in not investing all your self-worth with the possible outcome. You can do that in the making of something. You can pour yourself into that, but as far as like how it's going to be received or what other factors may be out there in the world that are going to contribute to how it does or doesn't do, you've got no control over that. So you sort of have to, kind of, ironically, you kind of have to let it go. It was, I learned a ton from not only the making of it, but of the aftermath. And I think, kind of I pride myself on not falling apart completely, because there's something that it was something that I'd wanted for so long, to be able to say, I directed a movie. And it's like, wow. But learning to pick yourself up and dust yourself off, and the sun's still shining, and the people who loved you before still love you, and you can go on.
Good lessons, and I'm glad you didn't give up, because we're going to have all these amazing films. I don't know if like on YouTube you guys can see all the chats going through, but they're awesome.
no.
Okay. Jill, how about you?
Well, first of all, I want to say this just because I feel like I said this a little bit in our green room before we started this, but I love this panel that Maureen, I know you said you had nothing to do with this and it was Bobby, but I also, Bobby, thank you. We love Bobby, right? Lightbox,
Yes,
Expo,
we love
yay.
Bobby.
Thank you, Bobby. But I love this group because this group is such a mixture of people who have done amazing Academy Award winning, or nominated short films and also features, and people who are on their first features. And I know that everyone on this panel is going to direct a feature. And sometimes people in the audience think that you do a short film with the intention to do a feature, right? But I think what I'm hearing from this group, and I love it, is that you start making films because you love storytelling, because you want to make a film. Like, that's the right intention, right? And I think that the people that have made short films that the world has actually been able to see, or who've been up for awards, it is the most pure expression of the director that you can possibly get. Like, these directors that have made their shorts, they have made up the story. They probably storyboarded them themselves. They've, done the characters themselves. They have art directed this themselves. It is so vulnerable, and it's almost all them. And I think that when they get the chance to do features, they're going to look back very fondly on that moment where they got to do a short film that was so much of them on the screen. And I just want to say that, like, that's why I love this group. It's not just feature directors, it's a mixture of people, and the short film medium is just so important, I think, for artists to be able, especially in animation, to express their whole self. And it's not that they don't work with a group, but when you step into features, it's a different animal. It's a studio. It's sometimes a story that is yours, but a lot of times it's a story that is a script given to you, and you have to find something within it that you really love, that it's part of it that feels like you, that you can take that vision in and make it yours, because you'll never survive the length of a feature if you can't find something in it that you love. And so my story of failure, long way around that, but I love this panel so much, I had to say that, is probably, I jumped, my first feature that I directed was Sony Pictures' first animated film, Open Season, and it was quite difficult because it was the first film that studio had ever done. And first films are always great, but they're also incredibly difficult. And so when we got through Open Season, I executive produced the sequel, and then I went on to direct Hotel Transylvania. And I was on Hotel Transylvania as the director for 2.5 years. So I directed it for 1.5 years. I was not a big monster movie fan, honestly, and I was asked to direct this film. So again, this is like the perfect thing where I'm faced with a genre that I don't really know or love. So I had to find something in the story that I knew and love. And it was the father-daughter story with Mavis and Dracula that I felt like I could tell that story well. And so, first year goes along, and then bam, this has happened 1,000,000 times since, but this will happen to anyone in this career. The heads of our studio changed. So all the executives that I was reporting to on this film were gone, and a new set came in. And they said, "We love you. We love the title of this film, but we need to start the entire film over again." And it's kind of like, that was the old regime's version, now our new regime version. So I went to the crew, to my story crew, and they had they freaked out, and they said, "Don't worry, this is not about us. This is not about our abilities. Like, this is political. So let's just dive in and tell another story, come up with something new." And so we did, and that was another 1.5 years. And then there was, I will say this very politically correct, there was a creative difference on my part with the studio, I should say, on where I wanted to take the film. And it was a line that was crossed for me personally, where I felt like not only could I had to ask myself, if I go this direction that they want to go with this movie, would I watch it in the theater? Would I go and actually see this movie? And the answer was no. And so I had to come to the studio and say, not only is this not a movie I can tell, like I would not go see it in the theater. And that is very compromising for someone who has to have the vision and hold the vision of a film for years. So Sony was insanely kind to me at that time, honestly. And I will say that in all honesty. And so I decided to step away, and it was a mutual good thing. And I ended up at DreamWorks at that time. But still, you walk away from something you've spent 2.5 years of your life on, and you think, oh my God, is this the end of my career? Have I just screwed myself so badly that no one's ever going to want to hire me again? And you also look back and you're like, that was 2.5 years of my life that I was giving like 10, 12-hour days, like at a studio, working my ass off, you know? And so this will happen if you're in this industry long enough. I'm just saying it will happen. If you take a step as a director, producer, key creative, anything, it is going to happen. And the first time it happens, it's incredibly difficult. And you feel like you just want to run away. And you think, why did I ever get into this? I'm an artist. I don't, all the politics, it's scary. But I have to say, if you can kind of take it like Peter said, and grow a little bit of a thicker skin and say, this when you're in the realm of feature filmmaking, you're working with 70, 60, $100 million of somebody else's money. And so you can't take these things personally. You just have to follow your gut, follow your passion, make sure you're aligned with a movie that you feel like connects to you personally, and tell it the best you can. And if the people on the other end don't want to tell that movie, walk away, get fired and hold your head high. Like you weren't the right person for the film. So like I said, this is a tough industry, but it still is artists telling their, trying to find the vision for a film, putting themselves personally into these things. And sometimes those things don't align perfectly with the studio, and that's okay. It's not a fail. It's a move on, find something that fits better, because otherwise this industry will kind of make you feel a little bit crushed, and you shouldn't feel that way. It's such a great opportunity, and you just pick yourself up and move on.
You say that you have thick skin, Jill and Peter. I'm just wondering, artists, there are many stubborn, but also many artists also have really thin skin. So is it, you think to survive, you just got to have thick skin?
Well, that's, and honestly, no, I have to say it's all about your perspective, because thick skin almost implies that you have to become tough and especially with women in our industry, that you have to become bitchy, which is something none of us want to be. And so I think it's knowing honestly who you are in your core of cores, who the stories you want to tell, the things that you're, and this is weird as you get older, and Peter and I have been in this industry of almost the same amount of time. When you get older, you're like, you know what? Even though I've given a year of my life to this doesn't fit anymore, or it doesn't feel right. And the studio thinks it doesn't feel right either. Move on and just keep your core, storyteller, keep your core self, be true to yourself. Like I said, we all get a chance to contribute a verse. What is the verse you want to tell? And if you're in a studio that you feel it in your gut, actually, when things start to shift. If you're in a studio where the movie isn't right, the alignment isn't right, it's better that you move on. It's not getting fired. It's not fail. It's moving on to be able to be more of your authentic self somewhere else. And so not thick skin, it's almost more like as a storyteller, as a filmmaker, you have to become really vulnerable with who you are and stay true to who you are, and be willing to leave or move on or whatever, or have bad box offices. Peter said, I've had that too. And it's you just go, you know what? I told the story I wanted to tell. I'm proud of it. Move on. You're not in charge of the results. So, know thyself, I think, is better than thick skin, right? Just stay true to who you are.
It's kind of like it almost sounds like being in a relationship. It's you have to have some self-respect and and realize that, hey, well, there's two parties here. I have value, I have worth. And I think, being in the industry for a little while, and Jill, if we've both been in the same amount of time that you started when you were 12, I'm just going to say that.
No, that's not
being in the industry for a while and seeing other, being able to see like other directors go through really big, traumas and problems on their films, and seeing people like, have a flop and then come back and do great on the next project. We're seeing that people's careers don't typically immediately end unless if people are big assholes, yeah, they'll like get drummed out. If it takes a lot. It really does seem to take a lot to like get like pushed out of the industry for good. So kind of realizing that was kind of it helps, to know that everything isn't like an instant death sentence, and having that perspective and being secure enough in yourself that you can say, well, I know I'm not a total idiot, so I'm probably going to be okay, even if there's a few rough patches. Kind of like that.
I'm therapy and new ideas.
Yeah, there you go.
right. Yeah, keep the drawer full of ideas. Like, just keep that, because you can always go back to it, right? Like, no matter what happens, you're like, wait, open the drawer. Ah, there it is. All those ideas.
Such wisdom. Okay, the next question is for Shannon, Erick, and Maggie. Okay. Some visionary directors, like people oftentimes talk about Brad Bird being known for this, know exactly what they want, and they can be more tops down, like this is what you do. But then there's also on the other side of the spectrum, I hear the directors who are known for having more like collaborative style, taking everything from the crew. And I'm curious, where do you lean in that spectrum? If your answer can't be, I'm right in between, where do you lean towards, and what's your philosophy on that? Shannon, I'm gonna make you first.
I have very strong opinions about this. I mean, I write my own films. So, and I've always written the projects that I do. So I come in with a strong point of view from the start. And I think a script is important. But I also think collaboration is important. I want to hear, I want the stuff that I do, even with, it's funny because like, I don't know how many people know, but Ultraman was an actually original idea before it became Ultraman. I love Ultraman. And so I came up with an idea inspired by Ultraman, was making it, and then it became an Ultraman film. So it's still it's actually a very personal film that became branded. It's like, I say, it's like fan fiction became real. But I do want to start off with a clear idea. I will even sometimes, whenever I launch Board Artists, I will give a shot list the way I would if I were on set directing. Here's a shot list. This is because I see it so clearly in my head because I've spent so much time with it. But I always say, if you have an alternate way of doing it, let's see it, let's hear it. And if it's going to make the film better and globally make the film better, because I think that it's one of the things that, because I've been in this capacity, I've been a designer, I've been a story artist, I've been a biz dev artist on a film, and you get so focused on the one thing that you're doing on the show, it's hard for you to zoom out and see the whole thing. And so when you're having to look at the whole thing, you're saying, what I'll say is, let me think about it. A lot of times I'll wake up the next morning and say, it's a great idea, amazing idea, but it disrupts this, and this, or it's not what we're doing on the film, or it's incredible and it inspired these 5 other ideas and it's worth going into those other sequences and starting to change it. And it's a tough thing to do because you have the pressures of the schedule at the studio, but I always just kind of, I've been tracking, it's the weirdest thing. I was telling Peter about this. I've been tracking my heart rate when I'm in stressful situations. And I've actually found when I'm pitching or when we were on set for Ollie, it's at like 48 to 50 beats a minute because I'm so focused on what needs to get done. I don't care about anything else. And you start to get into that pocket. My stress comes the night before, and it comes over the pressure of, I don't know about you guys, but I think we all want people to like us. And as artists, we seek the approval of others. And when you come in and you're leading a film, you know that there are many days when people are talking shit about you, and it's like they don't like you, and because you didn't choose their idea, because you did, and you just have to be okay with that. But it doesn't mean that you can't create still a collaborative experience where the film evolves. It always evolves. And for me, the best version of it is when a group of people can find that common story that they relate to in each moment, and that kind of pushes toward it. I remember a few years ago, I gave Peter and Jorge Gutierrez something to read that was very personal to me, that was set in my hometown. And I was like, they're not going to understand this. It's so specific to where I grew up. And Peter and Jorge were both like, I don't know that exact person, but I know people just like that where I grew up. I had a similar experience. And a lot of that actually has been folded into Lost Ollie. And so Peter and I have been able to collaborate on that. And that's the thing with us is in being able to actually have a collaborator on the call with me here. It is that push and pull of the better idea and what happens on the day. And I've lived with Ollie since 2018, and here it is 2021, but it's gotten better, it's evolved because of being open to collaboration. But it doesn't mean that you still can't have a strong vision and kind of guide everybody for it, because sometimes tone is everything for me. Tone is everything. And sometimes there's just a different point of view. It's why even whenever I give feedback on a film, when somebody asks me to give feedback on something, the first question I ask is, what are you trying to accomplish with this film? Because what I don't want to do is try to make it into my film. I want to see what your specific voice, that, to Jill's point, that's why I was so excited to be on this call today, because everybody on this call has a very different point of view. And I'm huge fans of you all. And those points of view are the things that inspire me to see. That to me is as, a film like Moonlight to me is as transportive as Star Wars, because it's taking me into a place that's so specific. And it takes me on a journey that I don't know. I don't know what that experience is. And the only way that you can get that is being truthful as a filmmaker, having a vision, and then also allowing for others to kind of find what's special and important to it, for them that supports that idea. So, yeah.
Maggie.
I agree with everything Shannon said. I don't know what else to add to it. I guess, yeah, like I agree with all of it. I think it's my first time directing, and this is a movie that's really personal to me, and it's really kind of a mashup of like a few different projects I had in my head that I've been kind of writing and trying to figure out for years. And I was like, oh, what if I just put them together? And I was like, oh shit, crap. That's cool. And that's what, and so it's very personal, and so it's very dear to me, and I want to protect it. But I also know, coming from a story background, getting the best story work out of people from your crew is if every artist has ownership over what they're working on. So I think you have to just really, understand and know that everybody on your team, whether it's the executives at the studio, down to your artists, everybody on that team, all want the same thing. They all want to make this movie great. So everybody's coming at it with that attitude. And I think once you embrace that, it's just, that's where the magic happens. We all know that the team is what it takes. It literally takes like a village to make these movies. So just embracing that idea is really important. That's all I'm going to add.
Erick, oh.
Yeah, totally, 1,100% agree with every one of you. Just to echo to Jill in terms of short feature, because there got to be a lot of students or aspiring artists in this room, I just want to emphasize that, personally, I really don't see the boundaries or difference between the feature or short. Some people say, oh, short and then feature. It's like a feature is prior, to the short, and then it's like a progression. It's really not. It's the matter of choice. For me, it really starts from the message and story you like to actually really convey, I really do start from there. And then, okay, it's a poem. It's more like a story that should come out as a poem than it's a short. And oh, it's like it has to be a little more novel, like a storytelling, than it's a feature or a series, or why not VR? So I think I probably always start from the story first, and then find a way to actually make the best version of it. And then, oh, okay, has to come out in a larger format. Then how you make it, of course, is different. How you make a short and how you make a feature, there's a difference over there. And then like how big the collaborative the group team will be based on it. So that's the only thing I kind of wanted to add on top of everything you guys shared. Yeah, just to emphasize once more on the message and the story and the idea, the core idea, which is the genesis of everything.
By the way, I'm purposely only calling a few of you at a time because there's so many questions. But if any of you ever have strong opinions on any of my questions, feel free to just interrupt. Because it's really boring if you guys just only answer when I ask it. I would love for you to fight with each other too. That makes it way more interesting.
Yeah, the one thing I would say too, and this might be somewhat of a hot take, but I found like there is this perception, and people will go back to talk about the history of animation for a bit. They'll point to like guys like Bill Peet, who maybe boarded all of 101 Dalmatians by himself and kind of wrote it. And be like, well, that's how animated films get made. There were still writers at Disney, and there were still directors at Disney. And I think there's a couple of things. There's a misperception of how those films were made, but also the way that those films were made. You had teams that had worked together for decades. And so they were allowed to be able to build these relationships where they could collaborate on those things. But if you look at like Chuck Jones cartoons, Mike Maltese was writing those things. He was even doing his rough drawing. So I think in the past, I feel like, I don't know if it's created by studios or producers, there's been this adversarial relationship created between artists and writers, and it shouldn't really exist. To come in with a strong script, each phase of making the film, you're rewriting the film, whether it's, your treatment, you're writing it, you're shooting, you're boarding, you're cutting, all those things get better, or they're revised, or they evolve. But that idea for me, I just never found it to be true, especially the way that films are made now, where you just have board artists just writing the film with no guidance or direction on it. It works. Where I've seen it work is 3, 7, and 10 on TV at like Cartoon Network now. But those days of Disney production of 5, 6 years to make a film, although Pixar still allows for it a little bit, but yeah, it's just like, that's my hot take on the whole thing. It's like, scripts are good, artists. It's good to have a strong script. It's good to write a detailed script.
This is weird to jump into. I agree with Shannon, and I agree that, Maureen, you even put a kind of a statement saying like, where's this filmmaking, and animation going? And I think where it's going, which is a little terrifying, because I don't think we need 5 years to make a film, but the average now is like 2.5 years, and that's terrifying. And, with Abominable, I really was given like 18 months to do that film. And there's a long story on that one, but I had a little bit of pre-time to work on that, but really production and even writing and doing the rewrites was 18 months. That was insane. And what I found was, and I'll echo Maggie in this too, which is just that you need to, when you're going to get the best film ever, if you are the person with the vision, but you are not so closed down or so ego driven that you think you have to do it all yourself. Like, you have the story in your head. I call this the filter, which is like, you can listen to anyone, and if it goes through the filter and it fits the story, use it. If it doesn't, tell the person why you don't think it's quite right at this time, but thank you so much, right? And on Abominable, because of the time restraint, one of the things I kind of changed my own method was that, when I was able to write that movie, which was lovely, but not always the case, right? But I normally, when you have a problem, whether it's the studio throws a note your way that's unexpected, that you have to figure out very quickly, you pull your story crew together. But in this case, we didn't have a lot of time. And so I pulled every head of every department, head of effects, have my production designer, my editor, everyone, and my whole story crew. And we all would come together in a giant, meeting room. And I would say, here's what we have to solve today, and I'd throw out the gauntlet of the issue. And what I was so surprised at is sometimes the solution did not come from the story crew. Sometimes the solution came from the visual effects director, who said, wouldn't it be cool if this crazy purple strike of lightning came down at this point and it did this thing for the story that elevated it on X level? And you're like, oh my God, because they're thinking visually, or the production designer's thinking visually, story's thinking story-wise. So it was like a collaboration of people coming at the story problem from different solutions, from visual solutions, from story solutions, from effects solutions, from my editor thinking, do we really need to do all this? Can we just chop the middle out of this whole thing and cut to the chase faster? And it was the most amazing feeling. Everyone felt like the movie was theirs. And I knew I was the shepherd of this movie, but it was a fantastic feeling to have this group energy and everyone coming at it from their different, their different expertise. And I don't think I'll ever do a movie again without bringing that giant group. And I say giant, it was 20 people, but that's bigger than what you normally bring in. And the team just was firing on a million cylinders. We got to learn to work differently, I think, to get these movies done faster.
Jill, to that point, it feels like for me, the frustration with animated filmmaking, as I'm doing this, Peter and I are doing, I'm making an animated film and doing a live action thing at the same time.
Right.
We have to invent spontaneity in animation. It doesn't exist. But right next to me, I have an iPad that operates as a camera for me. I can find things, I can find shots. Now, most studios are still terrified of this. They're still terrified of it. I'm like, guys, we'll actually compress the time and we'll find more spontaneity and more collaboration, because we're not so tied in with solving everything with the best solutions aren't always found with drawings. It's to just be out there and to be able to find something and be inspired by it, and to be able to say, hey, let's bring our software guy in who's helping us develop this camera. Hey, look at this. What do you think about this? Is this clear to you? To me, to have more interactive tools like that is a way to engage, rather than us as artists being very kind of backwards many times, and just going into our little holes and wanting to draw and then present an idea. Allow more spontaneous, real-time moments for us to look at things together and to talk about it, because that's been the cool thing about the Ollie process is, in many ways, Peter and I are looking at a shot and we're going, okay, we don't have that take. So we're going to use this shot on the back of their head, and then we're going to ADR this line over this shot so that we can get what we want, because I can't just draw it.
Right.
The pressure of that.
Right.
But anyway, Maureen, that's my question to you guys. How do you guys feel about the traditional path to making films? It's the way that we shoot animated films is very different now, but we're still using the same tools, just drawing. But how do you guys feel about that? And are you guys trying different things?
Yeah, I feel like
No, you go.
Sorry, Jill. Yeah, is it also just embracing a messier way of making animated films? I feel like for a minute there was a huge pressure on making like super clean story reels, they're all shaded, animated, basically I've worked on shows where the story reels are basically on twos. They're just animated,
illustrations.
Illustrations.
They're their own film medium.
Yeah,
I know. And the editor just puts it in and just plays it, and it's just live action. But I feel in order to work faster, we probably have to just get more comfortable with working a lot rougher and approving story boards that are not completely polished, but that's okay, and trusting that we'll find stuff in layout, or the animators will find the charm or the appeal in the shot. And it's scary, but it's more exciting, I think. And I think it makes it more collaborative and a lot faster, I think. But scary because I'm a perfectionist.
I'm sure we all are. I do think the short schedule in production is terrifying, and I'm not even like really in it, so maybe I'm totally wrong, with what I'm going to say right now. But yes, I agree with Shannon. Like I think there is a I've never worked in live action, but there is this lack of spontaneity that can happen in live action that we don't get in animation. And for me, like my favorite process is just being in an editing room and just seeing it, because that's when you're like, oh, this doesn't work. Okay, we need this here. And you get to it's just faster paced. And so like, yeah, like the idea of these, like what Domee is saying is about these cleaned up boards is like, well, let's just get the movie up and see if it even works. Like we love the script, yes, but we know that it needs to get better. So let's just put it up in like, record time and see if it even works. And the only way to do that is just to work super messy.
Yeah.
And like going into this digital age with Cintiqs and fancy camera works and stuff, I think it's really slowed that down. Like really taken boards to a different thing where we're expected to be layout artists and animators and stuff. And that's really, I mean, if you looked at Bill Pete's boards, it was just purely story and capturing emotion. And I think our jobs have and expectations of boards has changed a lot in the last few years, which is really hard for all of us.
What's interesting, Maggie, is there's so when we used to board on paper, which way back when I was part of it.
I did that too.
Right. So even at Pixar, we were boarding on paper, and your average sequence would probably be 300 to 400 panels. And that's, that's
a lot. Yeah, that was a pretty hefty.
Right. And you're like, oh my gosh, that's a lot. And you pin them all, right? Maybe a shorter scene, maybe 200 panels. But when we switched over to the Cintiq, just because it's faster and you can keep your background and just change your character over the top, that became so much easier. There was a point at DreamWorks where the thought was like, Peter remembers this, he's gonna laugh, but where it was kind of like, maybe we should go back to boards. So we would have a whole team of like assistants that would print the digital boards out. And like an average scene was like 900 panels. It became so much more when it was digital, and the temptation just to kind of do keyframe animation with it and show it more polished. And I think another pratfall is like, let's just see Act 1 and then judge that. That's like everyone in this room can just go, Act 1 artist, right?
Oh gosh, no.
If we don't have the time and we're gonna get it through, the only way all of us know is you got to get the entire film up on boards. Like even if it's slightly messy, like you have to see the whole film before you can make a judgment. You can't, and I'm hoping there's some studio executives out there. Please let us not just get stuck like boarding Act 1, and there's no time. Like we should see the whole movie, see if it's working, see what needs to totally be, taken
you should force it through. You guys are powerful directors.
I do not give up pages until they see the whole script. I do not show a screening until the whole screening's up, and I've been 100% supported with that at Netflix.
That's great.
One of the moments I found was when I was on the first version of Guardians before Peter was on it, was a young guy, Daniel Hashimoto, and he was just kind of like a coordinator. And the production designer at that time, Alex McDowell, was like, hey, Shannon, you've got this big crazy sequence you're boarding. Why don't you work with him to kind of figure out a way to do that? Because I had all the main characters in a sleigh being pulled by 50 reindeer, and I had 2 weeks to board it. And I said, and Hashi has this incredible skill with After Effects. So I was like, Hashi, like, how do you want to work? And he goes, well, normally board artists just give me the layered files after they board it. And I said, no, how do you want to work? And he's like, well, I don't know. Nobody's asked me that before. And I said, well, how about we come up with a way of working? And so what I would do, and I did this for the opening of Kubo, is I just thumbnailed the whole thing. So I thumbnailed it out and gave direction. And then once I had the shots, I'd send them to Hashi and I'd say, what assets do you need? And so I would just clean up that portion of it. And in 2 weeks, we did this full animatic, like, of the opening of Kubo that is exactly shot for shot, frame for frame, as it is in the movie now. We did it in 2 weeks. And it was just trying to think of a different way to work that was incredibly collaborative. He would suggest stuff to me. He would try a camera move. I'm like, yeah, that's it. Or let's try this. Let's pull it back. But it was there's not a version of that cut that exists that was actual storyboards. It was just the thumbnails. And then we just evolved at each phase after that. So, and that was, we can do way crazier stuff with that now where it moves more quickly and you can find things.
I have two more questions. I'm going to interrupt you because we have like a bajillion questions from the audience. I'm only going to be able to ask 2 of them. But this next one is from Jewel. I would like to ask what kind of content you'd be interested in seeing in animation in the next 5 years. Streaming services are opening doors to a new variety of animated projects. So I'm going to turn that into a 2-parter. What would you like to see and what trends are you seeing in the animation industry? So anyway, but I would like to hear from Dice. I hear from Dice because Dice been quiet. Dice.
I'm sure everybody says the same thing, but it would be nice to see more different kinds of stories. Not just the different exteriors, different. I know it's really an incredible outcome because of the recent social. Hopefully, it's advancing. But it kind of involved with some turmoil around the world. But I feel like we are getting better in terms of representation, which is really exciting. But hopefully, it doesn't stop at just the main character is this from this cultural background, or the subject is this about culture. I just hope it's more than that. It's beyond that, because each of us has our own stories, and there's so many different kinds of stories out there. And I hate to say it, but I watch more live action than animation. It's a really sad thing. I used to watch a lot more animation than before, but now I feel like there are more varieties, or I read more than watch animated movies, because I just feel like we need more different kinds. And I feel like I see that trend, and I see actually people here are making different kinds of stories. I see that. I'm so looking forward to Domee's Turning Red, because Bao was literally, that was my favorite Pixar short. I really feel like the trend is there, but I just want to see more. I just want to see different people having the courage to tell their stories and not really have to do what has been said to be funny or said to be good, because it's so subjective at the end of the day. And now, because of hopefully this opportunity with the streaming, we can access to the market outside of just American market, right? So it might not be funny in here, but it might be funny elsewhere, and it might be good enough for you to make a film. It might not be a Pixar level, $200 million budget, but there's so many different ways to make a film these days, right? And I just feel like that's kind of what I'm hoping. I love to pursue that myself, but I love all of us, not just this group, but people who just be honest with themselves and just do what they want to see. I just feel like it's already happening, and I can see it's gonna happen even more and more.
How about you, Domee?
You're muted.
Sorry, I was trying to find the unmute button. I agree with you, Dice. I want to see definitely more different kinds of animated stories being told. I would love to see like at least in the West, I feel like there isn't a ton of animation for adults or like older kids, just like and not just like with blood and guts and swearing and stuff, but I love like the slice of life genre in a lot of Japanese anime, where in a lot of manga, like it's about like Silver Spoon, where like you're following a student as he goes to agriculture school and learns how to inseminate cows and stuff. And I'm like, that's so awesome. and like specific and cool. And I just, yeah, I'd love to see different kinds of stories like that explored in Western animation. I think that'd be really cool. I feel like also too, if we're able to crack the code of like making animation, like on a like good animation on like a decent budget without, you know, exploiting people. I think that would be awesome too, you know. Yeah, that's my dream.
There's also, I'll tag for 2 seconds, but I'm going to give a shout out to Cartoon Saloon and Apple and Tom Moore for doing Wolfwalkers. And I mean, oh my God, I literally was like, oh my God, the doors just got kicked open for style. Like we can do 2D now. There is so much great 2D, 3D combo out there. I think Love, Death, and Robots has opened up a door for style. And the older, as Domee said, like more of a, and it doesn't have to be like blood and guts. It doesn't have to be, you know, adult humor that is R-rated. Like there's a middle ground that we're not tapping into right now, I think, which is, you know, if you look at the typical 3D animation over the last like 2 decades, and you think we're doing different styles, we were only going like this far or this far. Like if you look out there now, there's so much variety. And that to me has been like the most exciting part, is there's like a style explosion that I hope hits the mainstream with, you know, what Peter did with Sony and with you know, Spider-Man. Like those are the things, the stepping stones that make me feel like we are just scratching the surface of what, as artists, we can start like cracking the door open and, you know, exploring different ways to do things. So it's story, but it's also style. I think that's very exciting right now, you know? Yeah,
I think taking the ability of animation to do that and applying that to like stories that are more complex and more mature and more specific. I think once you do that, man, it works so well when you see it now, but I just think it's got the potential to bring so many more people into really just accepting and kind of and seeing what the medium can do that live action can, you know.
Hey guys, I have a question about the fact that many of you on this call, on the Zoom, are women or minorities. And so I want to know how you feel that's, you know, impacted your career, both positively and negatively. Any of you, but I'm gonna start with Erick. Erick, go. So how do you feel being the other has impacted you? Since we're on the topic of different types of stories.
Honestly, I don't know. I'm like just literally reacting to this immediately without processing. But of course, I'm aware of being a minority filmmaker, but at the same time, really not. I actually think of me as a just individual artist, and then everyone has different challenge and everyone has their own life story and things they have to overcome. Was same to me as well. I mean, because I'm Asian American, I think there are also some opportunities. Okay, yeah, there are Asian directors over there. Then let's see what you've got. But at the same time, I may feel, of course, am I fitting in? You know, but I really actually don't think about it. You know, so I just try to just true to myself, and keep on, I don't know, telling and sharing stuff I can share. I think that's what I really focus. I really hope, like, I don't know, artists, aspiring artists or students really don't get pressure or stressed out or, you know, being captured by that type of any negative, you know, that to come across to you. But yeah, but that's really me. Just, I think of myself as just one individual, just trying to tell a story. Yeah.
It's, you know, it's I'll jump in. I feel the same way to a large extent, but at the same time, you know, it's the bigger picture. I mean, I always think of things like, wow, you know, if I hadn't been Black, and if I hadn't grown up where I did, you know, I mean, how would things have been different? You know, it's a question I'll never fully have the answer to, but I know there are some things that are like, well, man, I didn't know that CalArts existed until I was, you know, pretty much, you know, already college age, you know, and would that have been true? Or I couldn't have lived around the block from a Disney animator when I was a kid and been able to go over to their house and, you know, wow, what are you working on now? I'd like to do that someday, you know. So there are things like that like could never have been a part of my reality. But I mean, on the other hand, it's like, you know, here I am. So there's a, you know, you don't, I don't know if you can ever. And I'll point to somebody like Shannon. I mean, I know Shannon didn't grow up anywhere where things were served to him on a platter, you know. So it's this weird thing that it hits you on an individual level, but there are larger social forces out there that, you know, you're kind of like bumping into here and there. And I don't know that it's hard to generalize, but it's something you wonder about, you know. And on top of that, man, it's like, what if I had tried to get into this industry, you know, 30 years ago, as opposed to, you know, 30 years before I did, you know, I wouldn't have even thought of it. It would have been completely unheard of, you know. So there's that. It's such a weird, complicated question that, you know, the most I can do is kind of be happy for the people coming up now that the situation's so different.
There was one thing I was going to jump in on that too, is just that I've been asked over the years to be part of so many female filmmakers panels, and you know, that's an honor, of course, whether it's been at Annecy or whatever. But someone asked at this one panel, I think it was in Annecy, like, when do you think the you know, kind of prejudice against female filmmakers will go away? And I said, maybe when they don't have to have female filmmaker panels. Like, when we're not called Asian filmmakers or Black filmmakers or female filmmakers, we were just filmmakers.
Just
like
filmmakers.
And I have to say, Maureen, honestly, and thank you again, Bobby, this panel was the director's panel. Yay. Like, we weren't you know, put into a category. And I feel like even when people are trying to talk about diversity, they still use words that put us in a category, which is so strange, right? Because I'm with Erick. Like, I didn't ever think of myself as a female filmmaker. I just thought of myself as like someone who loves storytelling, who, you know, was a storyboard artist, who was an artist, who wanted to be an animator. You know, that all kind of dissolves until someone points it out. And I think that's the weird thing. I think we've all had moments in our life where I remember I had an executive once come up to me after I'd been in the industry for over 20 years, 17 years as a director. And they came up to me and said, you know, we're doing this big marketing thing and we want you to kind of pitch the movie. Are you okay speaking in public? Are you okay? Like, and I thought, this person would never say that to a male filmmaker. Like, there's little things along the way that just go, ouch. Or if you pitch an emotional story as a woman, sometimes it's seen as too soft. Or if with the male pitch the same story, it's like, oh, he's so into his emotions, is great, you know. So it's, I do feel that, but honestly, sometimes I feel like it gets pointed out to you, and I feel like these times are changing. Like, and I can't wait till the time where we're all filmmakers. The world is diverse. We don't have to talk about diversity. It is diverse, and we get to talk about like how exciting it is to make these different kinds of films with different cultural, different, you know, racial, different like gender perspectives, right? And I feel like we're right on the verge. I don't know if you guys feel like that, but I do feel like those boundaries are starting to chop down a little bit.
I think so. And I think that's really exciting. But, you know, as somebody who is making a Korean movie, and like the first movie that's like set in modern day Korea, is fully about Korean culture. It's hard not to feel the pressure of that. And I think because there's just not, this is really the first like big picture set in Korea. And so there's a pressure to like be a representation of an entire culture in a country. And it's impossible for one person to carry that weight. It's been quite hard. And, it's a little unfair because there should be other projects and movies about Korea. And going back to what Erick was saying, for me, it's really remembering, like, I have to really remember myself first and my point of view of my relationship with my culture, because we all have a different relationship to our culture. So just being like, okay, let's get all this pressure out and just be like, this is my version of my culture and my relationship to it. But there is a lot of like, well, this isn't Korean enough, or this is this. And, being somebody who didn't fully grow up in Korea and grew up in Canada, it's like also dealing with this identity crisis of like, where do I really fit in? Is this a Korean movie? But it's also made in Hollywood. And so it'd be great if there were other projects that kind of helped to take away that, from like one project. I think that's really hard for a lot of like, movies that are like set in a culture that is very underrepresented. And I hope that changes.
Dice and Domee, I'm gonna leave it off on you because we've got 4 minutes left, but you guys are also like, are you feeling the same thing?
Oh my gosh. When Maggie was talking, I was like, oh my God, I've been going to that for the last 3 years.
I know, like we should talk over some
we should talk.
I'm sure.
We should talk. I didn't know you were also from Canada too, so that's really exciting.
Oh, I'm also from Sheridan. So
you're from Sheridan? Wait, how did I not know that? Wait, what year did you graduate?
I'll tell you over drinks. I don't want to.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Yes, I know we don't have enough time. Okay. Yes, I'm like, I agree with what everyone's been saying. I think for like maybe like the young new grads who are just entering the industry and they're feeling like, like they're feeling like the other at their new job and stuff. I know for me, when I first started at Pixar, I was like one of like 4 women in like the story department of like 40 or 50. But I felt like at some point you just have to like, and it's really cheesy, but you have to turn your adversity into an advantage somehow. And that's kind of like, it kind of becomes like your superpower. Because I know for me, like working on Inside Out on a crew full of men, that I suddenly became the expert on what it's like being inside the mind of a 13-year-old girl, which was awesome. But also I'm like, why me? I just started like a week ago. This is weird. But like try to find, like if there's any way just to turn like what makes you different and unique and make that the thing that helps you stand out, and then also like work on your craft too, because that will just help you communicate all the ideas that you have in your head to like a wide audience of people. So keep
Domee, I want you to tell us your like big stick, carry the big stick or quiet stick thing, because I think that
the quiet stick. Wait,
yes, for our Asian American one, you're like turning your disadvantage into your advantage, how people aren't expecting it, and then you're like bam.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, I mean, also I was lucky to have like mentors and people championing me and giving me the confidence early on. But yeah, like, I'll be in like a story room and Andrew Stanton will be there and, and other, more alpha story types of dudes. But I'll know that like, okay, I don't, I'm not like the structure guy. I'm not like gonna give you that really precise, like problem solving one big note, but I can give you like an offbeat or a new way of looking at this issue that you guys are trying to solve, that I know that those guys won't have, because they don't have the experience or the the specific, you know, background of like, you know, Western, Eastern, anime, like European, you know, comics background that I have. So I feel like just find what that is, and then that's kind of like your superpower in those rooms, because it's like, I love Andrew too. He's awesome, but I'm not gonna like go toe to toe with him and like, you know, like use the same language as him. Like I'm like, I know what I'm good at, you know, and I just have confidence in that. So just, you know, try to figure out in your first couple of years like what your voice is and how you're unique and what your strengths are, and try to nurture that. So that's your big stick in the room.
Nice. We are exactly at 1. Thank you for doing a long panel. I could have done this for all day. Maybe I will ask you guys to do this again just for my benefit. But thank you so much for giving your lunchtime. And yay, LightBox Expo.
And Maureen, thank you so much, Maureen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Maureen.
thanks for moderating.
So much.
Maureen.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
And because this is me, I'm going to do a quick plug for another panel tomorrow morning, also with directors, but it's 9 a.m. You guys all need to wake up, because Jennifer Nelson had to change her time because she has to represent Love, Death, and Robots at the Emmys. So I gotta go. So you to move it earlier, but it's worth it because Jennifer Nelson's there, who is the supervising director of all the Love, Death, and Robots, director Kung Fu Panda movies 2, 3, 4, and then also Megan Nicole Dong, who created Centaur World, and also Stephanie Stein, who's directing DreamWorks feature. And the theme is kind of obvious, it's Asian American, until the day, Jill, that we don't need to call it out.
Right.
But yeah, but I'll come tomorrow, 9 a.m. Right? All right. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank
Great to
you.
see
Thank you,
y'all.
everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Hey, guys.
Bye.
Bye.